Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's WEConnect International webinar. My name is Maggie Berry, and I'm the Executive Director for WEConnect International here in Europe, and I'm delighted that you've joined us for today's webinar, Vision, Voice and Visibility for Female Leaders, Stepping Up to Lead in 2020. What a great title. Our presenter today is Sarah Lloyd-Hughes. She is the founder and CEO of Ginger Public Speaking, a WEConnect International certified women's business enterprise and one of the country's leading public speaking experts. She's an award-winning coach, a TEDx conference guest speaker, and author of the best-selling book, How to Be Brilliant at Public Speaking. In today's session, Sarah is going to be exploring the key factors which prevent women from confidently selling themselves, and she'll take us through some practical steps to bolster our input and be more visible, vocal and visionary. To keep background noise to a minimum, keeping all participants on mute, so please do use the chat functionality if you've got any questions, and there will be time for questions and discussion at the end. Sarah's probably going to talk for about 40 to 45 minutes. The session is being recorded, so you will be able to listen back to it again. So Sarah, thank you so much for presenting for us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Welcome, everybody. Really a massive pleasure to have this precious time with you, this lunchtime, at least if you're in the UK. A few expectations before we get going. The way I like to run webinars is interactive. I think that it's far too often that we sit in a webinar but not really participate in it. So if you have your phone on, your laptop with its emails ready to buzz, if you have a little bit of extra work that you're trying to do at the same time, I'd say please put that down and put your attention on this activity just for the next hour. This is time for you, and to help you to do that and to actually make this a better experience for all of us, including me, I'd love some participation directly on the chat. So I would love, as I start to speak, for each of you to just find the chat function in your screen and introduce yourself so that I know who I'm talking to. Particularly, I'm interested in what is this topic for you? What would you like to get from today? So maybe a couple of words about you and your line of work and what you'd like to get from today. And I'll keep an eye on the chat as we go. I'll also be asking you to really reflect on and act on the things that I'm showing you today. It's not all about the theory, it's much more about you having some headspace to think through for yourself how you're going to extend your own personal vision, voice and visibility. So the more relevant we can make it for you, the better. We've got Maria. Maria, let me see if I can pronounce your name correctly, Del Pilar Castaneda Angulo, saying you're interested in having some tips. Maggie, Maggie again, does a lot of speaking. And, no tips and advice are always, any tips and advice are always welcome. Kerry, hi, dialing in from the US, fantastic. Kerry's an L&D manager, starting a women's leadership mentoring group. So great to see if there's any tips that you can pass on to your women's group. We do also have our Ginger team in the US as well, so it would be great to make any more connections to the US. Please keep commenting as we go, and I will pick up on your comments as I can. So let me just frame the subject matter for you. Let's be aware that we've just got an hour together, and I'm going to give you as much value as possible, but it will be necessarily high level to get you thinking. And then at the end of this session, I'm going to give you some pointers on if you'd like to get more involved in my work in some form. I'll give you some indications of how you can do that. But first of all, we're starting with the topic of the day. The topic of the day is vision, voice, and visibility, but I think we often start the opposite way round. We start with visibility being the first thing that we're called to, and this is how it normally goes for the women that I've been working with over the past 10 years and more. And for myself as well. Typically, we hide from the spotlight for most of our career, and then suddenly comes a moment when we need to be visible. For example, you might be asked to do a talk, to lead an initiative. You might get a promotion where you're suddenly more visible to clients, or you need to knowledge share, or indeed you're given the opportunity to take some credit for what you've achieved. And this position of visibility often comes as a little bit of a shock. And if you're anything like me, the sense of yikes, I know I'm supposed to be able to use my voice here, but maybe I don't have the time to think about whether or not I'm doing it well. Maybe it feels stressful. Maybe it feels unfamiliar, and maybe we would rather step away from the spotlight rather than into it. Let me know if you resonate with that. And, over time we might pick up some tips, or we might get pushed into the spotlight enough to, at some point, maybe be asked, well, what is your vision for the future? And other than that, you might not think all that much about it. And what I'm interested in today is actually us as female leaders taking charge first of our vision, and then from there to decide what is our voice to represent our vision, and from there, naturally, greater visibility stems. I see far too few female leaders taking responsibility for their own sense of vision and direction, and I think it holds us back. I observe that holding a lot of my clients back. So that's what I aspire to help us with over the course of today. Just to check in on the chat here, we've got Wendy Burson, I hope, wants to speak more about diversity and how to involve men. You're an international speaker already, so hopefully we can give you some tips that step you into even greater visibility, and potentially the vision stuff will help you to more clearly articulate the change that you'd like to create. Karen Waite, hi, in Yorkshire in the UK. Karen hopes to be inspired to be pushed out of your comfort zone. An experienced presenter and trainer need to get to the next level at a bigger audience. Okay, great. Let's try that with you as well. Background in professional development, founder of an online platform that captures and manages CPD. Fantastic. Great to have you on board, Karen, and others. Okay, so a little bit on my own journey. And if you have a little look at my left-hand side, this is me in Ginger Public Speaking, my company, for probably the best part of 7 or 8 years of my operations. Very enthusiastic, but a little bit running ragged. I became pregnant a little bit over 3 years ago with my first son, and that was about 6 years into what I thought was a successful business, but often felt very much like this left side picture. I was kind of stressed out. I had a scattered group of clients who often couldn't afford to pay me properly. Great team, but I wasn't using them properly. And our culture was a little bit hypocritical. We were talking a lot about people being visible, but we weren't as visible, and I wasn't as visible as I could have been. I had disconnected from my client base, and everything kind of felt like a struggle. If you've got an equivalent of that, then please let me know what that is in the chat. I didn't know it at the time, but I was lacking in a really clear, strong sense of vision. I didn't have that vision, and I certainly couldn't articulate very clearly and in a compelling way what it was that I wanted for my clients and for the wider world. Now, that meant that other people were not fully able to buy into what I was doing or advocate for me. Around about that time, I went through a really intensive process of redefining my vision for Ginger. I decided actually that in having my first child, I wanted to do less work and get paid more. I wanted also to do more meaningful work, as well as balancing it up with my family work, so my family life. So effectively, I wanted to work half as much for twice as much pay. And actually, I managed it. In 3 years of having lovely Leo, I managed to treble my company turnover. And this on the right-hand side is me just last year opening my New York operation. Because of figuring out my vision, managed to kill off my flagship program that at the time, for 5 or 6 years, people were constantly finding too expensive. And instead, I reissued a new flagship program that was 2.5 times more expensive, but always oversubscribed. And the reason that it started to work, and the reason that my business feels really meaningful now, like it's thriving, is clarity of vision. So that, I think, is what I really want to start with you on today. Maria's struggling to see the content. Can everybody else see my content? And maybe, Maggie, you can have a look into that whilst I keep going. I'm hoping you can see the slides. So let's start off by looking in more depth into vision. Then we'll go into voice, then we'll go into visibility, and I'll give you some practical tips and guidance along the way. So my vision in the end ended up, and I always say that visions are work in progress, but I devised a vision that felt really genuinely authentic to me, my purpose, and fit very neatly with the structure of the business. My vision now is to create an army of leaders who are a force for good on the planet. And I decided to focus my business activities on those speakers and leaders who are very best placed to create positive change. So that's one level of my vision that came out. And also I found a deeper, I suppose more specific level of vision, which was zooming in on women's leadership for myself within the business. And I found a goal to work over the next 5 years, now the next 3 years, with the UK's next 100 visionary female leaders. So identifying vision for me was all about choice and all about the capacity to say no to a whole heap of things. Let me show you a little diagram. Hopefully you can all see it. This, and please comment to which one of these you tend to sit within. This is adapted from a fantastic book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. The reference is at the bottom there. Many of us, and this I see so much in female leaders, are sitting within this top zone of a manager, or let's say a non-essentialist in the language of Greg McKeown. So we have, tell me if you are like this, or how many of these boxes you tick. We have multiple priorities. We struggle to say no. If you find that you tend to have others set the agenda for you and you're following what you're told to do to a large degree, then this is the territory that you're operating in. Often I experience, this is the classic sort of female stereotype of a COO who is brilliant operationally, who is just fantastic at making things happen, but is really uncomfortable with taking the limelight and is equally uncomfortable with setting the direction. So this might be characterized by niceness, by a tendency towards heroism, doing more, expecting less from others. Actually, that can disempower others or stop them from being competent. And it often feels like a place where you might be overwhelmed, pulled in multiple different directions, and this could be home life as well as business life as well. And often lacking in me time, lacking in a clear sense of purpose or direction. Tell me if you resonate with that. Just a question from Martha here whilst I look at the chat. Guess the social media part of the business is a big one. Don't know how to get people to know my business. Okay, I'm not going to comment to social media, Martha. That's not my forte, and I haven't at all built my business through social media. What I will say is what you're going to get today from this is the ability to strategically spot what it is that you want to be known for. And that's what helped me, because then the public profile, whether that's social media, whether that's you speaking, whether that's you pitching to clients, all comes much clearer and in a more compelling way when people know what they are to pass on about you. And that comes from you first. So that's very much this space of the visionary, the actually rather phallic looking single arrow pointing in one direction here. This place then of the visionary is a place where you have a clear sense of direction. So actually this line, if you take all of the little arrows and point them in one direction, you'll find that you're using the same amount of energy or potentially less, but you're pointing it in one direction only. Oh, hi, Yemi, nice to see you. Definitely beginning to realize multitasking is overrated, Yemi says. Yeah, I totally agree. So the place of the visionary, uses basically the same amount of energy in knowing what your bigger picture is, what you're trying to achieve. You find it easier to say no to things that honestly aren't your responsibility or are not furthering the agenda that you know is what you want. It helps you to be better at knowing what to delegate, and it helps you to spend more time in what I call and what others call your zone of genius, helping you to do what you're very best at. And this visionary, she's the leader who can draw others along with her, and she's the one who is more capable of attracting attention either to her business or to the causes that are most important to you. I hope this is making sense so far. So let's have a little look at what is vision. And here I have a very, very simple definition. I don't know if this is academically correct, but this is what I see vision as. Simply articulating what I want, being able to really be intentional about what it is that you personally want as a leader. And from there, everything else flows. So I'd like you to ask yourself, and if you'd like to share something of this with the group, you're very welcome to do that so that I can tailor this to you. What is it that you actually want for your career, for your home life, for the wider world, for your company? And here, it's great to reflect on this in multiple different levels. If you're like me, you'll find some of these levels quite clear. Like, I know what I want now, just about. I could tell you what I want 2 years from now. And then I've got a bit of a gap, 5 years, 25 years, I find it quite difficult. 100 years, this is really interesting. What do you want your legacy to be beyond your lifestyle, your lifetime? Unless you're planning on living 100 more years, in which case, good for you. But what is it that you want beyond the realms of your physical existence? When we start thinking 100 years into the future, everything becomes a little bit more abstracted. It becomes bolder. It becomes braver, and it becomes more based on your sense of identity as a human being, what really, really matters. A friend of mine wrote a book some years ago called It's Never Too Late to Be Great. And he said, or he quoted someone else saying in that book, that we overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, and we underestimate what we can achieve in a decade. And looking back over the past decade, as it's now 2020, I think that's most of us can see, wow, things have changed big time for us over 10 years. Imagine what's possible over 100 years. And imagine if you started, and we as a world started to take responsibility for what we want those big outcomes to be. Then we would start to shift the dial in things that are really important. Yeah. Do I have related questions people could ask to help answer these questions? I can pull out some, Maggie. This process here, this is sort of the summary of a more involved process we call the Vision Hunt, which I'll tell you some more about at the end. It's a program that we run. But yes, I can certainly give you some more backup content to share with the group at the end. In order to start this process of figuring out what do I want, I think one of the best places to start is this, and this is especially for female leaders who are so naturally in service of others. I think that we can get so caught up on the big picture, on the big questions, that we procrastinate, that we're uncertain, that we overthink it. But if we start thinking about somebody else that we want to serve, it becomes comparatively easy to start to think what we would like to achieve. So if you take one person or two people or a small group of people that you specifically want to help develop in some way or to help solve a problem for, that then I think is a good starting point for saying, well, okay, here is a problem that I've identified for that person. What would I like instead? And what's therefore an alternative that I'd like to settle behind? That, I think, is a really good way to do it. And then, from there naturally come some, I suppose, an impetus to act. For me, it's very easy to be lazy, I find it easy to be nervous or shy about getting my voice out there because there's a million reasons why not to. But if I feel scared or lazy, I often ask myself, while I'm not acting, while I'm just sitting on my butt here or fiddling with some design, or writing another email, or checking something, researching something online. While I'm not acting, who is it that isn't benefiting from my actions? So if I hold in mind these couple of people that I want to serve, that's a great motivator to step into the really uncomfortable place of being more visible, being more daring. An example of this, focusing on serving others, is one of my clients who's a QAT princess, and she had 5 businesses that she set up, and none of them were really quite fulfilling her. They all had an element of who she was and what she wanted to achieve, the impact that she wanted to have, but they weren't quite taking off, and she didn't quite know why. When we worked together, it was all focused around her identifying her vision, then stepping into a greater sense of voice and visibility. And the critical moment for her was identifying what she wanted her vision to be, which is to bring benefit to 1 million Arab women who have been affected by war, to basically rehabilitate those 1 million Arab women through the use of drama therapy, knowing that war creates trauma, but trauma also passes on to violence and war in future generations. So now she's found this incredible sense of spirit and direction. She's speaking at the UN today because she knows she knows first of all what her vision is, but specifically who she's doing it for. So every time she has to do something scary, she's thinking with her 1 million Arab women in mind, and it makes her braver. I hope that makes sense. Wendy, my bag, so I'm not sure what that means, is I don't have to talk about how much diversity is needed just because it is here. I'm not quite sure I understand the comment. If you can add a little bit of detail in there, then that would be great for me. Okay, so a little practical thing that you can do to help. Oh, big hairy audacious goals. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, silly me. Right, so what you would like is to not have to talk about diversity because it just is here. So you kind of want to make yourself redundant in some way. I think I get that now. Thanks, Wendy, for sharing. Okay, here is probably what you're already answering, Wendy. And this is an exercise I do with myself to really help myself clarify any time when I need a greater sense of certainty. Take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. One side is a tick, one side is a cross. And very simply, you're going to ask yourself, what do you want? And what will you say no to in order to make space for that thing to happen? So the yeses are on any scale that you want. And here I'm going to ask, again, in the chat, if you can share something that you want that you haven't necessarily shared about in the past. The bigger the better, I think, but whatever scale you've got today. What are you willing to say no to in order to let go of that? Things that you'll clear out of the diary to make space for your vision, things that you'll actively stand in opposition to, perhaps. This is the part of us that needs to get over being likable and being helpful. The fact is that if we are going to start and focus on something, something else has to be deprioritized. We need to get comfortable with saying no and disappointing people potentially if we're going to be visionary, if we're going to affect change in the way that we work. So the more successful you become in achieving your vision, the more you will necessarily experience pushback and people asking you for more stuff. So please share with the group, folks, and this is an opportunity for you to already get profile and visibility to the WeConnect audience. What is it that you want? We've had Wendy share hers, and I'd love you to, even if you don't know in detail, to share some thoughts on what it is that you want. Yemi, I know you, so I know you've got one of these. I'll definitely ask you to tap one in, and Maggie as well, but also the others who, who I'm just getting to know on this call as well will be great. I can wait. I'll have a little sip of water whilst hopefully some of you tap away. And in the meantime, since we don't want too much dead air on a webinar, I will continue, but I'll come back to you if you are able to share one of your what you want with the group. Okay, so the next section is once you know what your oh, hang on, we've got a couple of things coming here. Maggie, is there a difference between business goals and personal goals? Up to you, you decide. Some of us have business and personal goals that are really aligned. I would say that others really do like to separate our business and personal goals. Personally, I think it's a fantastic thing if we're able to find alignment in what we do for the majority of our day and who we are as a human being, but I know it's not always possible. Yemi wants to increase the placements of women and BAME professionals in senior positions in finance and IT, and big shout out to Yemi for doing some pioneering work in addressing the diversity talent pipeline. Good for you. If you have a company who needs diverse talent, then Yemi is worth speaking to. There you go. You get some amplification by being brave and stepping forward with your own vision. Okay, on to voice then. So once we know what it is that we're trying to communicate, we can start to work on the content of what it's going, how you're going to express it. And here let's start to look at voice, which is your ability to then put your strength of character, your literal voice behind what you care about. There's your ability to speak up for and advocate for the things that you believe in. So this is my bread and butter as a public speaking training specialist and what my colleagues and I work on. So assuming that a number of you want to improve your confidence in speaking, what I'm going to do here is give you some of our headline top tips that we work on as an organization. Once we've helped somebody to find what it is that they really care about amplifying or being known for, now what? What do you do to get your voice out there in a way that is effective? Just before we go there, Karen, thanks for the input. My vision, Karen's vision is we will inspire a step change in the capture and management of CPD. We will be the go-to hub for learning and continuing professional development. Great. Give us a name check of your organization in the chat as well, please. So these are some of our secrets as a company, how our methodology works. And this is the basis of an approach that has successfully built confidence, presence, and impact in probably now tens of thousands of speakers over the past decade and across the world. Countless clients told me that my team and I changed their lives, and here's why: because we go beyond the typical model for training public speaking. Typically, training companies focus on a set of rules and strategies for speakers. I've experienced this kind of training when I was learning to speak myself. Surface level behaviors, things that we can copy from another speaker that we think makes a difference. But that method actually made me feel more nervous rather than more natural, you know, laden down by the rules like our little character on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side. And secondly, they give the impression that there's something like a professional communicator. There's a lot on the right-hand side, that there is right and wrong public speaking, that if you look just like that particular person, you are going to be successful. We know now from TED Talks, we know from the new format and the new style of leadership that is sweeping the world, that rules and copying others are not effective ways of being spotted, being visible. In fact, they're a brilliant way of switching people off, but they're not a great way of engaging people, inspiring them and encouraging them to interact with and remember and pass on what you have to say. Okay, so our three top tips, my three top tips for you are, first of all, counteract this need to learn how to do it right. We have to speak before we're ready, jump over the jaws of the crocodile, as it were. And here's where I think, you know, I look at our male counterparts and I think, gosh, they're really good, so many of them, at sticking their hand up and speaking before someone has invited them to do it. You know, I frequently sit in rooms where I say, right, I'm going to give the opportunity for someone now to stand up and share their vision. And the amount of encouragement I need to give, particularly when it's a group of all women, for somebody to stand up and have a go is absurd. We need to get better at speaking before we're ready, and especially if you're one of those perfectionist types, we have to sort of counteract that by just getting on with it. Some of you may have come across the book Speak Like a Leader, Act Like a Leader by Himania Ibarra. That's exactly what she says, that we as leaders, we don't think or study our way into greater success as leaders. We do our way into it. And it's exactly the same with speaking. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for relatable human beings who often, the imperfections are precisely what we fall in love with. Secondly, my training strategy is to feed the strengths rather than the doubts. And this is, again, back to the perfectionist type. How often do you get feedback on speaking at all? And when you do, how often do you focus on perhaps the 5 or 10% that's negative and fail to affirm in yourself the 95% that is really positive? I think you should get into the habit of spotting what you're really good at and developing a style that is just really comfortable with you being yourself. That's the only way that I've personally been able to overcome my own fear of public speaking, which still surfaces from time to time. I need to know that what I have is enough rather than is deficient. I hope that makes sense. And then the third piece is very much connected to what I just said. Connect to who you're serving and nothing can daunt you. I always say to my speakers that they need to count the number of people who they're speaking to. Maths genius over here will say, well, normally more than one, hopefully if it's an audience, and count the number of yous that there are in the room. One, who does it make more sense for you to focus on and obsess about, them or you? Normally we just are so nervous about ourselves that we forget to think, well, how can I serve? How can I be of benefit to these people? As soon as we start doing that, the nerves start to slide. So I invite you to take charge of your own voice, informed by your vision. Please ask yourself right now and write down some answers to this question. Where do you need to speak up? Is this a situation where you need to physically get out there more in the spotlight, in the public? Or are there situations where, for example, in a boardroom, you might not speak up when really it would benefit you and your vision to do so? And what do you need to say, and to whom? If you're going to really influence the people that you need to influence to make your vision happen, you can start being really strategic, even if they are the kind of person that might be your nemesis. Since this isn't about you anymore, since this is about your vision, the brave visionary female leader will say, well, what does it take? What does it take to be heard, even if it's terrifying? You know, for me, the terrifying kind of person to influence is the small and silent type. I don't know if any of you have watched Wallace and Gromit. It's a British animation, but there's a little penguin in that, an evil penguin in that show, and I'm always terrified by that evil penguin because it has these kind of steely eyes. It doesn't say very much, and whenever I encounter a person like that who doesn't say very much and is small, I find it absolutely terrifying. Yet often I seem to find that they are the key decision makers in the situations where I need to have influence. So I've been working on recently seeing that person less as a horrifying, terrifying person, and more as a person with needs that maybe I can empathise with and fulfil. And when I don't let myself be daunted by them, I'm able just to settle into myself a shade more and seek to benefit. Great. Just looking at the chat, loving the feedback there. Thanks, Yemi. speaking before you're ready. Yes, you, definitely. And Karen, loving the thought about speaking before you're ready. This is really the key to going with your gut and the adrenaline that keeps it real. It can be scary. Yes, it can be scary. That's the point. But we're not going to be scared of the fear or nervous of the nerves, because there's a bigger picture at play here. Okay, let's keep going. So now we're going to have a little look into some practical tools around visibility. How can you be that person who is seen and heard for the right reasons? What should you be considering? Little model for you here. Normally this would pop up all one by one, but we don't have that capacity today. I'd like you to draw this down and reflect for yourself what your visibility sweet spot might be. And here, this is the, I suppose, the sweet spot wherein people will be interested in what you have to say, and it makes sense from a marketing perspective and from a sense of purpose. So 3 things need to combine. First of all, your fame. So what are you already expert at? What profile do you already have? What do people call that? And here, it's important to not be too modest. Sometimes it helps for other people to tell you what they think you're good at if you don't know already. Combine that with your passion, please. We need more leaders who combine what they're already good at with something that they care deeply about. And here, passion brings a sense of ease and a sense of energy around what you have to say. So it's really easy to listen to somebody who's passionate, and it's also easier for you to speak, I think, about something that you have passion around than something that is a bit dry and dull for you. And then finally, the demand. So what do other people need? What do they seek? Without this blue circle in play, you've got something that you might be really hyped up about, but you don't have something that other people are willing to buy, whether that's literally buying it or more metaphorically buying the concept. This was the piece that I definitely lacked. I had bundles of charisma and enthusiasm, but I wasn't necessarily 4 or 5 years ago speaking to urgent needs within my client base. So once you've got a sweet spot like that, you can start to think, well, what do I call it? How do I claim my own particular piece of thought leadership? And that really is the territory, this gold star in the middle here, is the territory of ideas that start to spread, ideas that are in some way viral or in some way spreadable. Critically here, it all starts with you getting clear. So unless you're personally clear, you can't expect somebody else to resonate with, remember, and pass on your message. But once you are clear, you're looking to find a few, I suppose, key phrases, metaphors, pieces of language that encapture what it is that you want to say that is different from what everybody else is saying in some way. So just this week I was speaking with a good friend and past client of mine, Claire Mason of Man Bites Dog. We were doing a little evening event to a group of female leaders to promote vision, voice and visibility for them. And Claire has come up with this fantastic campaign, the gender say gap versus the gender pay gap. So the gender say gap is the difference between the degree to which women are seen and heard within organizations and industries. And because she's in thought leadership and marketing herself, she felt really confident in building this kind of very clever key phrase that she could trademark, which she did, and then she can speak about it and be known as the person who has coined that term. And as a result of her doing that, I'm able to talk about it, talk about her, and pass it on. And that's a brilliant example of someone who's found the intersection between something that she's already famous for. She's already famous for helping people to step forward with their ideas, her passion for helping women to do that, and the demand for other people to get help in furthering the diversity agenda. So she's found a sweet spot, and she's found some compelling, simple, juicy, newsworthy language that I and others can use to talk about her and to amplify her. So I hope you can start to think about what that might be for you. It's often worth getting professional support to find those particular words, especially if you're not a massive wordsmith yourself. But there will be something in your vision, in the work that you do, that has the capacity to be spread by other people. A few tips. Sorry, this is all coming up at once here. Again, I would have liked these to come up one by one, but we'll look through them one at a time. Maybe I'll even draw on this screen. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, so this is a set of ideas to help you take charge of your visibility. We're going to start with the red ones. First of all, hopefully you can see my little scribbles. Say yes like a man. These are things that people have told me is their best practice advice for stepping their visibility forward. This was a piece of advice from a global FTSE 100 global head of IT, who said this is her strategy, that whenever an opportunity comes, she knows guys would say yes to it, so she says yes to that opportunity, whether that's a panel discussion, a speaking slot, an opportunity to lead an initiative that is congruent with her vision. She damn well says yes like a man. I love that one. Nobody asks you to be perfect. Another client told me once that she's really taken inspiration from knowing that perfect wasn't the aim. Perfect was never the aim. The aim was to be relatable, to have something intelligent to say, and then to say it with force. This is a favourite of mine as well. Prince Charming isn't coming, and if he is, he'll probably nick off with the credit for your work. This is that tiara syndrome piece that women are sometimes pointed out as waiting for somebody else to give them permission or to recognize them. And the tiara piece is the idea that, well, when we've done enough good work, Prince Charming will come and he'll give us a tiara, he'll crown us, and he'll say, well, good girl, you're now a princess, you're now valid, and you're most welcome to take the spotlight. But yes, as we say here, Prince Charming isn't coming, and if he is, he will probably nick off with, which is British English for steal, the credit for your work. Most women, most female groups that I speak to, at least half of them say that they've had the experience of men taking credit for ideas that actually were theirs. And I often think it's the way that we phrase our ideas. Sometimes we phrase our ideas as a suggestion or a what do you think, and then the guy will come in afterwards and state it like a brilliant idea with confidence, and people will attribute it to him. What else have we got here? Some practical things. Oh, okay. No, let's go to the orange ones here. If you haven't been told no, you haven't asked enough. I like that. Let's get comfortable with the idea of being such an annoyance with our visions that people start saying no. You know, if we're afraid of hearing the word no, then we're probably not pushing enough. I can't see this next one because my screen's on the way. Whoa. If you don't, can't see that word. Got it written down. If you don't signal your value, I can't spot it. This one I particularly say to my team. I've got a lot of women in my team. Only recently have they decided to start boasting about what they do. Normally they expect people to notice, but what I say to them is it's really helpful for me to know what my team are up to, and particularly the good things that they're doing, because then I'm able to celebrate with them. I'm able to sell them better. It's useful for me. So we can start to see that if we don't signal our value to our clients, to our colleagues, to the wider world, they just won't know it. They're not going to go looking for why we're brilliant. It's not to say that we have to do it in a cringeworthy way, in a way that goes against our values, but on a basic level, we have to be our own little PR hub. If you can't do it for yourself, do it for the others watching. So if you care about women's empowerment, if you care about us together being more visible, then it's a really, really good reason to step up into the spotlight. I know a lot of people say, well, if I'm stepping into the spotlight, then it's sort of self-serving. I just don't like the idea of public speaking as a result. But it would be if it was about you. Actually, for the audience, they get a lot of benefit from hearing you speak. And it's well worth remembering that if you ever feel that you're being selfish or grabby by taking the spotlight. Other people who resonate with you may well be watching. And if they can see you do it, they may well think, well, maybe I can do it too. Particularly people like you, Yemi, who are promoting diversity and are a brilliant, diverse voice yourself. So if that's not a good excuse to get up and out there, then I don't know what is. Then the green pieces are your practical suggestions for some ways you can increase your visibility. So LinkedIn profile is a very, very good and easy way to raise your profile. Nobody needs to give you permission. You can write an article, you can post a video. It's a brilliant, brilliant way to genuinely network these days. Ask for opportunities. Maggie has opportunities for people to speak. Many other organizations have opportunities for people to speak. Many conferences are desperate to have more female speakers on their panels and speaking. Unless you ask, you don't get. Look for allies and people to support you, people to endorse you, people to shout about what you do. And a personal favorite of mine, if nothing else, you can record what I call a perfectly imperfect vision video. This is one challenge I'll leave you with, which is to, this afternoon, put your camera on. I don't get that. I don't buy that anyone lacks a camera these days. On your phone or on your laptop, press record, and just for 1 minute or 2 minutes, explain what it is that your vision is. What do you care about? What are you trying to achieve? What kind of support do you want? And post it on your social media, and you'll be surprised at the results, I think. Maggie, thanks for the time check. I'm getting to the end just now, which is a little summary. This is your to-do list as a result of your vision, voice, and visibility theme today. So vision-wise, get clear. What is it that you want? Start saying no to the things that get in the way of whatever it is that you want. Really take some time to answer this question. Otherwise, you're just going to be at the mercy of all the different arrows pointing in all sorts of different directions. Voice, identify where it is you need to speak up. Practice speaking now before you're ready. Ask for opportunities. And visibility, identify your visibility sweet spot and start building your profile. Have some space now for questions. I also have some information about next steps with Ginger, which we'll leave a couple of minutes at the end to go through. So, Maggie, do you have questions that you want to start with? And also, anyone who has a question, you're most welcome now. Yes, Yemi, you will have the copies of the slides. Absolutely.
Yep. Sorry, I was just getting to the mute, but I was going to say exactly that. I think for me, one of the things is about the vision piece and how you get to that. But it sounds like you have maybe a more detailed, some more detailed things that we can ask. And I was just having a quick look at the questions that people submitted in advance, and they were things like, practical tips around taking visibility to the next level in my career. You've definitely come to that. There was a question, and maybe this is about starting to say no. Somebody had asked, should we speak every time, or that we think we're maybe not being respected, or should we wait for the right occasion and to do it with action, but not with action, not words? I'm just wondering, I guess that the saying no piece, I mean, we could do a whole session on saying no. And in fact, I think we have done a webinar on the power of saying no, because I think it can be quite it can be quite hard sometimes to say no. I don't know if you've got any top tips on that, but connected directly to this.
Yeah, I think it does come back to knowing what for. So the book Essentialism I would really recommend for very, very practical and skilled techniques on how to prioritize. What he says there is the word priority always, in terms of the word meaning, prior means one or the first thing. You can't have multiple priorities linguistically. So if we know what it is that is the number one priority, it becomes quite simple and quite logical to say no to the other things. Now, of course, it takes practice, especially if you're the type who is used to being the helpful person. And there we can get a kind of martyr fix out of being needed. But if you've got something that's bigger, that's more important than you personally being needed, because you've got your million women that you're trying to help or whatever it is for you, then it becomes much easier. Of course, you have to do that bungee jump moment of saying no. But what I've tried to do recently is just explain, to say, look, my tendency is to say yes to things and then regret it later. I'm going to just say no to this for now. And if it's a yes, I'll come back to you later. But for now, I've got enough on my plate. Always pausing before saying that automatic yes, rather than diving into it, gives you that little bit of extra permission. I think when you frame to people what you're trying to achieve, it almost excuses your habits, right? Or having to come back to them another time and say, actually, I've overcommitted. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, very much. And I think that that the piece that you said just a couple of minutes ago about when you're you're so used to being the helpful person, and it's a change sometimes to say no. And I think that I see that a lot from different people. So I'm just going to check a couple of the final questions that were submitted in advance.
Also on the chat, if anyone's got other questions, you're welcome.
So if anybody does have any questions, please share them in the chat. So do you think there is any one key problem that holds women back from doing the kind of the public speaking? Is it kind of baseline confidence, or is it anything else?
I wouldn't say that there's anything genetically different to men and women in that respect. I think we make brilliant speakers. I think women are great storytellers, are great empathizers. I think we work really hard to serve others. I think it's just simply about getting on with it, And sometimes we don't need this, but we feel like we need a little nudge up, a little bit of somebody saying, "I spot you, and I'm going to make you do it, even if you don't feel like you're capable." So that's why we use our approach. I mean, I cheekily called my approach to public speaking the scare the shit out of you approach to personal development, because what we're looking to do always is to put people outside of their comfort zone so that they can't go back. We take people to Speaker's Corner, which is at Hyde Park in London, the home of freedom of speech, up a stepladder to have a rant to the general public. We showcase some of our female leaders at the House of Commons, and once you've gone through the experience of doing something like that, where you're, in the House of Commons example, standing up in front of 80 peers, expressing yourself in a way that's short format, that's highly potent, that's incredibly well received, and you get video of it afterwards, it's very difficult to go back to being your normal self, and that's what clients have said to me in the past. Karen, more books or information or blogs or books and things that you recommend for vision. I will send you some basics on our approach for vision. I'll also just talk you through now, if I may, briefly the different options available if you want to go deeper with Ginger. The Vision Hunt here, my little green pen, I'm getting very excited. Oh, it's not working now. The Vision Hunt is our in-depth process over the course of a month, specifically for incredibly busy female leaders who don't get the chance to think about their vision. This process, I always say, it's your opportunity to luxuriate in, to roll around in answering the question, what is it that I want? I'm doing this process with a couple of brilliant ladies tomorrow, and they're loving it so far. It's just a joy to be able to really get clear on what you want. So that's the Vision Hunt. Let me know if you're interested in talking about it. We tailor build the sessions to participants' availability. if you're just simply wanting to work on the basics of voice, body language, nervous habits, our one-day foundations course you can find on gingerpublicspeaking.com. Runs every month in London. We're also running a couple of events in New York in February, which one of those days is a foundations day, and one of those days is a women's sort of personal branding workshop. Then the big one, which is the one that results in the House of Commons speaking slot, is our 8-month Leaders' Voice journey. And this is really our premium package for visionary female leaders who are absolutely ready to take their vision and to run with it. We're currently enrolling our last couple of spaces for the 2020 cohort, which starts in March. We also have one space left for charities, which I think is 4,500. And this is an epic, life-changing journey. If you're interested in that, then give me a shout. And absolutely no pressure. I don't want to take on someone who's not quite right for this program. It's a selective process. But if you're interested in that, then let me know. And finally, we have a fantastic range of in-house programs that we run around women's leadership, but also in general around public speaking and leadership communication. And we're a globally operating team. So if there's something within your company that's an opportunity to bring this incredible, important work into your people, and if what I've said today resonates with you, then I'd be very happy to discuss that or any of the other pieces with you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sarah. And we will be sending, a copy of the slides and a recording or the slides that we can share, so we can drop into that any of the resources or anything that you'd like us to share, including some information there. Sarah's contact details are on screen at the moment, but we'll make sure that they're included in the follow-up email as well. As we're literally 1 minute to 1 o'clock, I'm going to wrap up here, but please, if you've got other questions or there's other things that you'd like to find out from Sarah, please do get in touch with her directly. It's great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's so much more than just public speaking, right? This is a whole bigger piece of things for us all to think about. And I think your comment about busy women, I think we're probably all very busy. So sometimes just taking some time and stepping back and thinking about this for ourselves is massively powerful for you as individuals, but also for you in your role as business owners and with your teams as well. I think that's quite an interesting part of the puzzle for us all. So, Sarah, thank you very much. This was great. We'll certainly be following up. And thank you to all of you for dialing in live, or if you've been listening back online, thank you for joining us at a later date. So, Sarah, thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you all.